Guys, appliance repair experts. So today, this is Sebastian. Me and him are going to be doing replacing the compressor today. As we know, this is a fridge that we have. It's a linear compressor made by LG. So the first thing that we're going to do is go over what you need, the tools first. Most important thing are the tools that you have to have your tools before you replace the compressor.
Alright, so first thing you need is your refrigeration gauges. These are what's going to allow you to fill and recover the refrigerant out of the system. Then you have your R134A, that's the refrigerant that's going to be used for the refrigerant of the unit. You have your basic socket set so you can remove the bolts off the compressor so you are able to remove it. You have extra fill ports so you're able to weld those on to the compressor so you're able to fill and recover refrigerant. You have your micron gauge so you can know how much and if there's any leaks in the system. You're able to attach that to the vacuum pump so you're able to have your micron gauge and your refrigerant gauges together. Here is the piercing valve. This is what you're going to use to attach the system so you're able to recover the refrigerant. After that's done, then you have to fill the hole up and take the tool off. You have your nitrogen tank. That's what you're going to use to pressure test the system and make sure that you have no leaks. Your vacuum pump, that's what's going to evacuate the system. Some basic tools you're going to need. You're going to need your welding equipment, which comes with an oxyacetylene system, your Silphos, and all the different types of tips and torches you're going to need to do the job. You have a temperature gauge, so you'll know how much and how cold the evacuator coil is after you're done the job and making sure that it works properly. Some basic bits, Phillips, Robbies, Torx and extensions, and 5/16 and 1/4 inch so you're able to remove it. Some pipe cutters, flaring tool, and a scale so you know how much and precisely how much refrigerant is going to be going into the system. And then obviously your basic hand tools so you're able to do the whole job. Also, you're going to need your evacuation machine and your evacuation tank.
Well, obviously, guys, before working on any electronics, you have to unplug the power. No power source. The first thing we're going to do, obviously, we're going to take the back plate off, panel, and that's where you get to your compressor there. All right, so first thing you're going to do, you're going to want to pull the refrigerant out of the unit. So first, you're going to sand the pipe, clean it up, make sure it's all clean so no impurities get into the system.
Why did you choose this spot?
Because this is the low side of the system and you want to recover everything in a gas because the recovery machine cannot compress liquid. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to pull apart your piercing valve and choose the appropriate sized collar so that you can pierce the system and evacuate the system. So right here, we took off the high side line off the gauges. That is going to be hooked up to your discharge of your recovery machine, going into the vapor port of your recovery tank. Then the common rail side is going to be connected to your suction side of your machine. And then you have your low side, which is now going to be connected to your piercing valve, like so. Pull off your cap, put in your valve, after that's connected, you're going to get the supplied Allen key that came with the piercing valve.
Just to pierce it.
You're going to put this in so you can wind this all the way in as far as you can until you feel the resistance of the pipe being pierced by the valve. After that's done, usually you got to go all the way down. After that's all nice and tight, You pull this back all the way out, and that what allows the refrigerant to come out to then be recovered out of the system. After that's out, loose like this, you're going to set your system up to vapor. Make sure both your lines are open. Start the unit. And when after that's running, you open up the system, and that's what allows the system to continue running to fill up the tank.
Guys, the purpose of this, why we're doing this right now, because it's very important to recover the Freon. A lot of customers, when you let Freon go at their house, they don't like it. So that's why you're gonna have your tank and your vacuum. You're gonna basically take all the Freon that's in the system. And once we do that, the next step we're gonna be doing right now is brazing it, taking the compressor completely out. All right. So basically, before you guys do that, before you guys start doing the brazing, all this will have to come out. The next step is, guys, before me taking the brazing, I want to always take these clips off first because it's going to be hot and I don't want you guys burning yourself. One, two. So obviously, guys, before you take your starters out, make sure you guys take a picture if there's any. Usually it's just a clip-on. Every time you guys do replace the compressors, always have to replace your filter dryer, guys, because most of the time we don't notice it, but these filter dryers, they get clogged up inside. That's why Freon won't actually go to your coils. Before compressors, always double check your filter dryer.
All right, guys, so when you get your oxyacetylene torch, obviously you have to hook everything up properly. Make sure you know that acetylene is the opposite thread that it usually is. Make sure all your connections are tight. Make sure your tanks are full, and most importantly, make sure you have everything set up properly. So on your acetylene tank, you always want to set it up to about 2 psi, and on your oxygen tank, you're going to want to have it set to around 10 psi. Always make sure you always turn on acetylene first. Spark it up. Then you introduce your oxygen very slowly until you get a feather tip, such as like that, to do your welding. And remember, anytime you do take it up, turn it off, always shut off your oxygen, then your acetylene. All right, guys, now we're gonna unsweat the fittings off the compressor so you're able to remove it and you don't have to cut and replace with couplings. Remember, the less joints, the better. So first, obviously, your acetylene, then your oxygen, start heating up the joint until you see the silk-off starting to liquefy along the entire joint. Once you start seeing it get red, get your pliers, hook up to the joint, keep some even pressure until you see it fall off like that. Make sure you do not leave this on the hardwood floor. Have a container with water in it so it cools down. That's the one. Now we're gonna do the low side fitting. Adjust your flame accordingly.
It's okay, just keep recording.
All right, now we're gonna take off the filter dryer. Again, acetylene first, oxygen. Try to always take off your capillary tube first because that's the most sensitive. Once the capillary's out, make sure they don't get stuck together when you pull them apart. Next, do the side with that comes from the condenser coil. Alright guys, always remember, be careful with your capillary tube. Just remember when you kink this, the fridge is basically useless after this because you cannot get this part any longer. The hole is very, 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 very small. That's what meters the refrigerant in the system. And once this is compromised, you basically have to rip the entire fridge apart just to replace this. So just be very, very, very cautious.
All right, guys, the next thing we gotta let it cool down. We don't wanna burn ourselves. So give it about 5-10 minutes. By the time it cools down, the next thing we'll do is everything is already disassembled. So all we gotta do is every time we're taking the compressor out, guys, always have to be tilted up because you got oil inside there. You don't want to spill the customer sauce. So once you take the compressor, you tilt it up, compressor will come out. The next step will be is we'll put the compressor back in and we'll start doing our brazing again. Then the next step we'll do, we're gonna be vacuuming the system. By removing compressor, we gotta be very, very cautious. It's kind of a little tricky, but once you get to do it, it'll be a. So basically, you have to always look at the back there. Tilt your compressors. Move all these lines that we don't need from there. All right. So basically, it goes off. So guys, before installing the compressor, we obviously have this rubber legs. It's very important to have this on before we put the compressor back in. And again, guys, doing it has to be tilted, so we gotta put the front legs on first. The way it's going. Let's start the leg here. So clips are very important. Some of them have a bolt, some of them have clips on. So just gonna slide it in. And obviously the back one. Okay guys, first thing is first, we need to cut our filter dryer. So as you know, they have a little tip here and tip right here. So it has to be cut from both sides with your copper cutter, guys. Yeah, these things just have tied it, give it a 1/4 inch, tie again, 1/4 turn, tie again. You don't want to do it tight because it's going to kink your copper. So just a 1/4 turn, 1/4 turn. So once you get just a little bit, you can just pop it open. So guys, you gotta have a cut like that. So we're also gonna do this side as well. Alright guys, the next thing we need to put our filter dryer. So obviously we just got the sand, the tweezers, so we don't have any angle. If it doesn't fit, if it doesn't go on, you got some brazing left here, you can just heat it up. But it should be perfectly good. So we got one side here. It's nice and fit right here, the 1/4 inch. Another thing we're always gonna put copper line right there as well, like that. So obviously we're gonna be brazing this. That goes there. And obviously every time we replace a compressor, we need to have always new compressor will have this on. We gotta heat it up. But every time, okay, we gotta spread the holes on this. You can heat it up and try to put it in, right? The thumb just goes in there. It's not like we're doing these. And again, before every time you guys recharging it or heating it up, you would have to take this little key because it's gonna overheat it. This will be important, so we gotta save it here for next time. All right, so now we can start doing the brazing, guys.
All right, guys, now we're gonna start welding everything back together. Like before, acetylene first. And your oxygen. Make sure you get your sulfos. Make it easy, put a little bend in it. And start with your furthest joint first. Remember, heat the inside copper, then the outside. Slowly apply the sulfos all the way around the joint. You want to make sure you see it being absorbed into the fitting.
So after when you're done brazing, you always want to check the joints, so you get this little mirror. You can check at the bottom, make sure your weldings are completely good. If you get a lot of, all right, seems to be good. Perfect. All right, the brazing seems to be perfectly fine, guys. So now we just gotta let this cool down. That's when we starting pressurizing the system. And also once we pressurize the system, we're gonna start vacuuming the system to make sure there's no oil or anything left behind. Okay guys, before pressurizing the system or vacuuming, we need to put this little pin back in. So it just goes here. All of them comes with a little key that you can really just put it back on. Don't give it too tight, just one tight, that's it guys. That's it, there you go, perfect. All right, so we're gonna put our low hose goes in the section of the compressor. That's it? Yeah. All right guys, so we're gonna have to put all the lines here. The first thing what I like the gauge to be standing up so the pin doesn't fluctuate. And we got your line going this way. And you got your high side will go on your filter dryer. Perfect, make sure all of them is off.
All right guys, now we're gonna fill from the high side and we're gonna watch the low side. That's gonna tell us when this is up and we're starting to get pressure here that our system is clear and it should be running okay afterwards. So as the low side's going up, you want to watch for that till it gets around 100-ish psi. So when this gets to about 100, you stop it. Wait about 30 to 40 seconds for the pressures to settle. And then when you see it settling, memorize the number that it's at. And then hopefully, and make sure you wait about 15 minutes to make sure that there's no leaks in the system.
Okay guys, so we've been about 15-20 minutes. It looks like the gauge has been steady, hasn't moved. So that's a good sign that there's no leak inside the unit. So the next thing that we're gonna do, obviously guys, we're gonna put the electrical back in. before we turn on the compressor, before we turn on, we're obviously going to pressurize the system, vacuum the system out. Okay guys, so before we vacuum the system out, as we know we got pressurized, we got oxygen stuff in there, so we gotta let it out. That's the high side. You gotta go your low side too. This is your high side, this is your low side.
All right, guys, now we're gonna get to the process of vacuum down the system. What you're gonna want is get yourself a nice T that can seal your micron gauge and your port for your gauge set. First, you're gonna wanna put on your T to your vacuum pump. Or if you already have a set of gauges that can read microns, you don't need to get to this step, but if you don't, you're gonna need to get yourself a micron gauge. Next, you want to hook up your micron gauge right to one side of the T. Screw that down nice and tight. Then your gauge set on the bottom. Now, after this, you're going to want to turn on your vacuum pump and monitor the micron gauge. As soon as the micron gauge gets down to 400 microns, then you know everything is evacuated properly and there's no moisture in the system. After that, that's when you can start the fill process. After that, what you want to do is you want to turn on your micron gauge, wait for that to boot up. Then you're going to want to turn on your vacuum pump. Get below 4,000 microns. What you're going to want to do is open up, and that's when it's going to start evacuating the system. Once you see this number get below 1,000, you know you don't have any leaks, but you have to wait till this gets down to 400. Once it's at 400, you therefore then shut this valve off right here. That goes to your gauge sets, and that's when we're going to start filling up the refrigeration system.
All right guys, so almost done everything. So now it's time for us to put Freon in the fridge. The first thing that we're gonna look at is the sticker. We see it takes R134A and it's 4.41 ounces of Freon, all right?
All right, now we're gonna fill the fridge up with refrigerant. First thing you're gonna do is gonna get your bottle of refrigerant, put it on your scale with it on. Then you're gonna zero out the gauge by pushing the tare button. Once that's all settled out, reading 0, you're going to then hook up your refrigerant lines to the bottle. Now remember, when you're doing a compressor replacement, all the oil and everything has been evacuated, so you're going to want to fill this as a liquid, which is the red dowel on the side. So you're going to open that guy up. Make sure your valves on the bottom of your gauges are shut. Then you're gonna wanna open up a little bit there and a little bit there. That allows some refrigerant to be into the lines and you're not getting a false reading. Now you're gonna go back to your scale. You're gonna zero that back out. And now you're gonna open up your lines to allow the refrigerant into the system and fill the system up till it's at 4 ounces.
You can look at that gauge. So we're looking at this to go at 4.41 ounces. All right, so we know guys, in the fridge it takes 4.4 ounces of Freon. We have 4.3, but it's always too good to put another 3 ounces, 4.8 if you want to add, you can add a little bit more Freon in there, it's good. So we know that this fridge right now is good. We got 4.4 ounces of Freon in the fridge. So it looks like it's good. All right, guys, so the first thing we need to do, take all the line. There is gonna be some Freon in here, but it's okay when you take it out, and nothing will happen. That. Now we fill our tank. Put the caps on back, all of them. Sometimes if you guys can't close it, you just have to tilt this here.
All right, guys, now that the fridge is repaired and everything's working, we've tested it, you want to make sure that everything's working properly. If not, you always want to make sure you tell your customer that a compressor replacement is never a guaranteed fix. There could be leaks, there could be other problems. It could just be as simple as an electronic part or an evaporator coil gone bad. Just remember to always write down on the invoice it's not a 100% guaranteed fix, and that there could be other costs of repairing the fridge. In this case, the compressor was the problem and it was fixed, but nevertheless, another time on another unit, it could be a compressor, but the reason the compressor went bad was because there might have been another fault. And in order to find that fault, we had to change the compressor. So always make sure you write on the invoice that the compressor is never the 100% guaranteed fix, but it's the best start to finding out what the problem is.